right, folks, let's call our meeting to order. This is the Monday, July 15th, 2019 meeting of the Addison Central School District. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming, both board members and audience. It's generally been the tradition of this board, not very old to have traditions, but previous to the high school board, take July off, but instead we have 2 meetings this month, and really appreciate everybody making the time. Before we begin, let's do a quick round of introductions. Suzanne, if you wouldn't mind beginning for us.
Yes. Victoria Jenny. Tori David. Mary Colony.
Lorraine Morse.
Peter Conlon.
Peter Burrows, Superintendent.
Jen Newseater. Dick Mark.
Amy Lavash. Mary Gill.
Will Hatch, Technology Director.
Brittany Gilman, Business Manager. Caitlin Steele, Director of Teaching and Learning.
I'm going to use my vast powers as chair here and turn off the air conditioning because it's so loud, but if people start feeling uncomfortable, please. You're making it noisier? Anyway, if people are feeling uncomfortable, please speak up and we'll put it back on.
When we faint on the table.
Is that?
When we sort of faint and slide in
Exactly.
our chair.
Yeah.
Make it next week's then.
There we go. Now I don't have to scream.
So much for your position.
I know. I sat here specifically for the air conditioner.
All right, well, thank you. This is the point in our agenda where we welcome public comments. As I have said in the past, our public comment period is a time for us to listen, to hear the concerns and comments from the public. And I don't know if we have public comments tonight? Yes. Maya, would you like to begin?
Sure.
If you would just please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
My name's Maya Allen. I live in Ripton, and I just want to say thank you, first of all, to all of you for meeting all summer long, and on our behalf, on the behalf of all our students in the district. And I'm speaking for a former ACSU board member and neighbor of mine, Joyce DeCiana, who couldn't be here tonight, but she asked me to read out 2 questions for you, and I wondered if we could have a written response. Is that possible, Peter, to the questions?
Sure, if the board is okay with autarizing me to provide maybe that'd be great if you could email me the question though, too.
I can do that too. Sure, okay. First one is, we learned from a neighboring district, and she thinks it's the MAUSD district, that their unified charter or agreement says that they cannot close a school in any of the member towns without the consent of that town. This seems like a very fair way to make the decision. And her question is, why did this board choose not to include the towns in on the decision to close their schools? What would it take to change this in the charter?
Okay.
That's the first question. Second question, regarding board membership. So many other districts have 2 members from each of the small towns and 4 from the larger town, or similar numbers. This seems like a very fair membership formula. If we did this, we would have 2 board members looking out for not only the best interest of the entire district, but also for their own town. It would be exactly like the former ACSU board makeup, and it worked very well. Why did you change the members at large during the consolidation process? What would this seems very unfair to the outlying towns, and what would it take to change this?
Okay, yeah. This was, just to be clear, this was all put together, not by this board, but by the committee that created the charter that was then put out to the voters when the new unified district was created. But I'd be happy to answer those in writing, if you wouldn't mind emailing them to me.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm John Wetzel from Ripton as well. And just want to say thank you to all of you for doing all of this hard work. I know it's not easy. We all know it's not easy, and coming during the summer, and it's taken a lot of effort, and we are very appreciative of that. I do have a question related to closing schools, and that it's a very big deal to close any school for any town. And I'm wondering what were I'm not aware of the specific other options that were considered beyond closing a school, because at the facilities meetings, we were giving all options, all of them. You said you whittled them down. So I'm wondering what the other options beyond closing the school, what they were. And I would like an answer in writing if possible as well.
Sure. John, you've got my email, just to be happy to respond. But I guess I would say, I'll give you a more thoughtful response, but at the moment, we haven't actually decided to do anything.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just basing that off the facilities meetings.
Yeah.
And yes, I realize that for sure. And also, I just want to say a little bit of my story specifically is that my family with 2 kids in the elementary school system, and we moved specifically to Ripton for the school. We had nothing, we lived in Middlebury, we had nothing against Middlebury or Mary Hogan. It's just we're looking for a smaller school system, or a smaller school for our children that we thought they would thrive there. And I just wanted to say that as an example of, I think that it's a value. It's something that we should look at as a value, rather than as an asset, rather than as something that's, that's less economical. So looking down that, and that's just a statement, so thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? All right, well, we'll continue along with the agenda here. We've got a set of minutes provided. I have a motion to approve minutes of June 25th, 2019. You move your own minutes?
I'll move my own minutes.
All right.
Sure, why not? They're good.
Second? Thank you. Any changes, addendums, suggestions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? We have several abstentions to note. Jory, Victoria, and Suzanne. Bill paying. Chip.
Bill paying 3 weeks of bills here. There's quite a few numbers, so bear with me since I'm obligated to report these and dull they be. First one is from July 1st, and there are 3 bills, 3 sets of bills. One is food service bill for $31,179.74. The second one is another food service bill for $26,112.15. And the third one is for general account payment of $282,530.45 and payroll expenses of $725,872.84 for a total of $1,800,403.29. So that's the first week. Second week is for July the 8th. General account was $55,048.96, and payroll expenses of $156,297.15 for a total of $211,346.11. These were all read by myself and Victoria, all 3 weeks. Third one is today, and there are 2 separate ones out of the general account, one that's marked fiscal year 19 and one that's marked fiscal year 20. If we had bills like this every day, we'd be in really good shape. First one is $15,891.30, payroll expenses of $298,067.74 for a total of $313,959.04. And the second one is fiscal year 20, which means where it's accounted in, which is $31,841.29. The bills for all seem to be in good shape, and I would move that we pay the bills as reported.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we pay the bills as reported. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right. Just to follow up on that, since we have now switched fiscal years, Brittany, when do we sort of get that kind of final fiscal year accounting?
Yeah, early August.
Okay.
I expect to have that in August. We're getting ready to close. We're almost done.
Great. Thank you. All right, on to the main topic at hand tonight. Just to remind everybody, at our last meeting, we decided we would sort of take up the contents of the facilities master plan, the proposed contents of the facilities master plan, sort of one or two topics at each meeting. Last week, we talked about whether to include the sixth grade question into the master plan. And tonight, we are discussing capacity and whether the master plan will include going ahead with a study. And what I'd like to do is hand out a decision matrix. And this is something that Mary Cullinane came up with as sort of a way to help us through our decision-making process. And Mary, would you like to talk a little bit about it while I pass it around?
Sure.
I'm passing out a lot, so if the extras, if you throw out to the audience, or that'd be great, once we just at far ends.
We discussed kind of how do we think about going through a conversation in a productive way that recognizes if we say this, then that. If we don't say this, then that. And laying that out in a way that helps us understand what we're really saying yes to, so that we can be clear in that affirmation or in that challenge, and understand what are the consequences of it. What are the next steps if we say as a board, yes, we would like to consider this, or no, we don't want to consider this. And so what this matrix does is it tries to help us through that conversation a little bit so that we stay focused and making sure that we discuss as an entity those things that we need to discuss and get to a point where we understand what this facilities master plan will yield, what the expectations we all should have of that facilities master plan, and what expectations the community should have as well, and how do we communicate those expectations. And so what you see here is kind of thinking about this, as Peter had shared, we have some big questions that we have to answer, some priority questions, and we've laid them out as a board. And this first one that we chatted about 2 meetings ago, I believe we put language to, is do we seek formal analysis and recommendation for district capacity planning? As simple as that, like, do we seek that analysis? And if we say yes to that, you can then see some of the things, and this is draft line, this is just, there's things in here that we could tweak, but if we say yes to this, this would happen. If we say no to that question, here's how we should think about that response. And then it continues down. Well, great. If we do say yes, here are some things that we're going to have to consider, and those things could go one of 2 ways. So we thought that today what we could do is go through some of this and just look at it and chat about it as a board, and then try to move this forward. And then theoretically, I think the intention is for each of the ideas that we discussed is to help everybody through that conversation with a similar document, if that makes sense.
Great. Yeah, good. So in Mary's defense, she just, she kind of drafted this and put some language in there. And she said that there's some language we could tweak. There are some dates and times that we could adjust a little bit. But just to walk through it a little bit, in concerning, I found it quite helpful in that it sort of creates a nice structure for us to work through as we make these hard decisions. So, the question we're asking ourselves tonight is, are we going to go ahead, with a study of our capacity and recommendations that might result from it? I think it's pretty clear that if we say no, that just means we're basically saying that we are not going to move forward at this time with any further analysis of district capacity. That we'll continue with the decision that we made to include the sixth grade into the master plan, and that plan will, at the end of our process this summer, require a vote of the board. But if we say, yes, we do want to move forward with this analysis, it means we need to hire an expert in the field, set some timelines as to what would be potential actions to come up with some information. And then we would sort of, once that work is done, presumably in a year, that, we would move forward. And I guess you can read right through it all yourselves. Kind of walks us through, this is what it means to do this is what it means to do that, this is what the public can expect as we make these decisions. Ray, do you want to talk at all about the language?
I think one of the things that we chatted about that was important, I think, is timing. So if we say yes to, we want to seek a further analysis and hire an architect, being realistic, there's going to be a period of time. I don't know if it's 6 months. I don't know what we're going to say how long one of these analyses take. It could take a year. It could take 2. I don't know. So there, we would have to recognize whatever that entity says with regards to timing. And then that entity is going to come back with some recommendation, some analysis that would include things like, here's how to create a different type of boundary structure for your district based upon the data that we've received. That could be, that analysis could say, your boundaries are exactly the way they should be. That analysis could say, for the next 10 years, you look good. That analysis could say, for the next 10 years, these are some of the things you have to think about. We don't know yet, but we're saying yes to this entity providing us with that data. Once we get that data, we would then, within a period of time, again, here it says approximately a year, we would have to decide on that. We would make some type of decision based upon those recommendations that came out of that analysis. So if we say yes to that process, we should recognize then that even if we say yes to that process and this timeline is in place, the implementation of those recommendations is going to take another whole set of timing and years to do that. And what does that mean? So I think it's important that we all take a step back and recognize that this process is not something that we have an anticipation is going to have a material difference in September. It's not going to have a material difference in next September. That there is a timeline to this with good analysis that has to take place before we will have a picture of what is necessary. So that's how we outline this. Now, if we don't accept their findings or recommendations, that the current state is to remain, we'll probably, are going to have to think about the fact that from a math perspective, there will be other decisions then that have to be made. Because the number of what we have seen from the data presented to us, the number of students and the funds that we have to support our current practice, those two things are not equal. And so we're going to have other decisions that we're going to have to make. So it tries to kind of paint the picture for folks as to what are we saying yes to, what are we saying no to.
Great. Yes, Chip.
In defining capacity, we have a general idea, but I mean, is that a capacity to reach our goal of equity for every child? Is that capacity that tries to balance off, as you mentioned, even boundaries and town boundaries or whatever, which is one of those things that we have said right along is going to somehow change, probably. Or is it just, I remember many years ago when we did the high school and the middle school and trying to decide capacity relative to utilization. Utilization was really a difficult place to get to because if you have an 85% utilization of a specific space, it's basically 100%, because you've got to have some flexibility and downtime just to do it. So if you have a utilization of 40%, well, obviously, there's a lot of time when that space isn't being used for what you... So the capacity and utilization, to me, I have to sort of get it straight in my mind at what it means. One other comment relative to capacity, the fact that most of us have stated as we got into this process that the status quo probably could not remain for many different reasons. One of the somewhat givens, I thought, was that because of our decreasing enrollment and the fact that schools were built or evolved as to the size that they are, for the numbers that we had at some point, that in fact we have capacity in almost every space in some degree. So that's, part of what I would struggle with in trying to discern how do we decide whether we have capacity or not. I'm making an assumption, yeah, we have a lot of capacity.
Well, and if the sixth grade move to the middle school remains, I think that's, definitely true.
Right. Well,
That's
I'm
a
not,
major factor.
that's my opinion, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying that in talking about capacity,
Yeah.
we're not talking about, are we gonna have capacity in 10 years? We don't know. It's unlikely the population is going to, or the fertile population is going to change markedly so that our school population is going to radically change enough to change the capacity in almost every one of our schools.
But I think the question here is really about, it's the verb there, it's planning for that capacity, right? So given the structures that we have, given the intention of our program, given the environments that we're trying to create for our kids, how do we plan to ensure appropriate utilization and capacity, right? And to your point, I agree completely that, it's like an unemployment rate. You never want an unemployment rate of 0%. You see how hard we struggle with an unemployment rate of 3.7%, right? We're at full employment even though there's room there statistically. You have to think about that buffer as well when we're talking about the utilization of a building.
And I think we have to get down into, an expert has to get down into the weeds so that we know what capacity even means. What is the current square footage requirement per student? What's available? A classroom that 20 years ago hosted 25 kids, is that still a classroom that can host 25 kids? And so I think we're going to need some expertise to really look at our schools and see what's there and see what's available. Yes, Mary.
One of the things you mentioned is to hire a consultant, and then you listed an architect. Would that be the only consultant, or would we be looking at?
Just an example of
It's just an example, so.
Yeah.
Because
I'd leave
the
that up.
architect looks at physical space, right, and, design, et cetera. But when we look at the educational experience and the environment of school, we need a different sort of, right? So we're looking at more than one consultant.
Well, there may be somebody who fits the bill. There are architects that specialize in schoolwork, but I think we could go with language like higher expertise.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
Yes, Peg.
I'm having a hard time separating the yes and the no, because it strikes me that the sixth grade decision has a huge impact on capacity. And to ask somebody to come in and look at the various things that I believe need to be looked at, but without having made a decision regarding the sixth grade, doesn't function for me. Am I missing something?
Just timing, I think. At our last meeting, we agreed that part of the master plan would include the administration coming up with a plan for sixth grade to go to the middle school. And so at the time we come to vote on our master plan, if that portion remains, then, then the expertise that we hire to go in and look would go in with that assumption in mind.
But if you go in without that assumption in mind, it strikes me you're traveling with numbers, capacity that doesn't function.
Well, I suppose, I mean, I think that, you know, we wouldn't give, we would give clear sort of guidance to whatever expert we had going in there at the time that we did it. So at that time, you know, we will have the plan adopted, and if the plan calls for the administration to continue moving with a sixth grade program at the middle school, you know, that would be an assumption that the architect could go with. Or conversely, they go in and do a dual assessment and say, well, if the sixth grade's there, this, and if the sixth grade's not, that. But I think that if it's part of the master plan, then that's the guidance that they need. Yes, Jen?
If I might offer, are you concerned that only the no mentions that the sixth grade is moving on to the middle school? Are you thinking that it's an either or, like, yes, we move on to
No, I
study?
don't think it is an either or. It strikes
But are you
me
saying
that
that
the
this-
sixth grade issue figures greatly in whatever happens over here.
Right.
And so the way this seems to be stated is you make the sixth grade issue, but then you don't go on to do the other kinds of things that seem to me would be required.
Are you talking about under the no?
Right, are you saying it's because the sixth grade is only listed under the no? Is that what, is that?
I
what
guess
you're
maybe
concerned?
that's what I'm stuck with. I don't know.
I think the assumption is that it would be moving in both, but she's just specifying that even if we say, no, we're not looking at this capacity, that the sixth grade vote that we made last time would still progress as planned, despite any further capacity study.
Yeah.
But if we did continue with the capacity study, we would go under that assumption that the sixth grade is moving as well. It's just not listed here under the yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is
All
that,
right.
is that where the concern was? It was an
I
either
guess,
or?
Yeah.
I guess, I just sort of had this feeling that the sixth grade somehow or other was off in a different compartment, and if a decision was made with that, that sort of pulled everything to a halt. The
Yeah.
sixth grade has got to be folded into
Yes.
whatever it is that
Absolutely.
happens over here. It has a huge effect.
Yeah.
Right, and that's why we made that decision last week, so we
Right.
could go into this conversation with, okay, so we are pretty sure that we're gonna, follow through with that if the administration has a plan moving forward, we feel supportive of it. So
Okay.
now, this is our next thing to look at.
Okay, sorry, I guess I just slipped a gear.
No, it's
No,
good
we
to know that
appreciate
we
you,
want you to fully understand, you might
yeah.
not have been the
Well, we
one that
wanted-
wasn't understanding.
We want to make it clear as well. You know, again, this was some draft language to help us get through the process tonight.
I just want to appreciate Chip's point about when we're talking capacity, that we're also meaning equity. I mean, we know that, but I think it's really important for us to make sure that we're constantly making that explicit, that this is not just about physical capacity, it's about our entire capacity and what's ultimately driving that.
Yeah, but I think we do need to continue to always emphasize that that's one of the most important
Yeah.
lenses that we're looking at all of this through.
Which may also then inform who else we might need to hire.
Right. Right. Yeah. I would like to sort of just go around the table and get a sense of where people are at in terms of this point in our decision matrix. And if that's the direction we're going to go. Suzanne, do you feel comfortable leading us off on this?
Sure. I guess part of me, I don't mind going ahead with the analysis. My worry is, who are we going to find to help us with this work? Because when we started the process, we were under the understanding, and I think it's still the same, that we're the only ones in Vermont that are doing this work so far. So where would we go to find someone that's knowledgeable to help us? So that's,
Yeah, actually, I'll say just a couple things. One is that actually the Harwood district is actually in the same process.
Okay.
But this is really to look at facilities, right in there, looking at buildings. And we had a brief meeting with an architecture firm, Truex Collins, that does a lot of school work. And they're one of several architecture firms in Vermont that are very well versed in school construction and school regulations, at least in terms of getting the technical numbers of spaces, how they're utilized, what's needed, that sort of information.
So that was one question that I had, and the other piece is, as everyone keeps saying, is making sure that any movement forwards is around the equity issue, making sure that the decisions that we're making is what's right for all students, not just for some, and that, there are students with disabilities that are in this mix too, and we can't forget about any of our students, no matter where they fall on the continuum. But that's kind of those are my worries. I know that we struggled trying to find specialists to help us with other pieces, and I just want to make sure that we can find the right people to help us put the puzzle together and do it well.
Great, thank you. Victoria?
I would say, if we were voting, I would agree to move forward with analysis. I feel like there needs to be a much deeper dive into what exactly we're asking these experts to achieve, and real specifics around what the goal is. So that part, I guess that's where my worry is that can we really shape the questions posed to the experts in a way that makes the analysis, truly helpful in what we need, because it will clearly be expensive and take a great deal of time. So I guess if I had to say today, yes, I would say yes, let's move forward, but I would like to see sort of a much deeper dive into this, what we're seeking.
Is the process to put out an RFP here, is that how that would work?
It depends. It depends how it's structured. I think it could be an RFP. It could also be consulting as well. So it may fall under that $15,000 threshold as well. I think it came up in a conversation with at least one firm in past years and talking about this same kind, not this study, but a different work with another architectural firm. So, Brittany, do you have anything to?
So you do have to bid for actual construction, but often not for services. For example, would be legal services. You don't actually have to go to bid, although it's often good practice, so.
Yeah, we would have the opportunity though to put a
yeah.
statement of work together that
Of
would be
course,
shared.
yeah,
Okay,
it just wouldn't have to
Great.
necessarily
Okay,
follow the
good. Yeah, 'cause
formal.
I agree with Victoria, as long as there's
Yeah.
I don't know what the process is here, but as long as
Yeah.
there's some formal process that puts language to the request.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily have to follow the formal
Yeah.
RFP procedure.
Great.
Great. Chip?
Yeah, I guess I struggle with the point about what questions do we ask. I also struggle with the point is that I don't think any expert's going to tell us what we're going to have to do. I'm a little worried that we're going to spend some money and a lot of time trying to get to a point that's not going to necessarily help either this board or whoever the next board is or whatever's going to make that decision to finally do it. Because the status quo is not going to be the same, all right? We're going to do something. And I just worry about us sort of pushing this down the road a bit, albeit maybe there's somebody that can give us some information that will help that a little bit. But, I don't know. I mean, if you take the 6th grade question and assume that that's going to happen, yes, then all the schools, other than potentially the middle school physical plant, which will have another class in it, will have excess capacity, period. And so I don't know how it's going to change even if we try to plug in those variables, be they special ed or nursing services or counseling spaces and all the other things, it's not going to make it easy for us to make a decision, I don't think. It won't make it easier for me, because I don't think there's any shining light out there that's saying, this is exactly how you're going to do it. So, you know, in some ways I lean a little bit to the no, only because of that maybe cynical part of me that says, I don't know if I'm gonna get what I want.
Right, I guess if the end, if what we're seeking is, can we, or how do we create schools with a class size of this, where every student has access to this, this, and this, where all rooms have, windows and if we create that list, then I guess then do we really need an expert to tell us
I don't know. I mean,
whether or not we can achieve it, or is that just something we could work out ourselves, but what we're really doing is asking for an expert to do it so we can say, see, this is what the expert said. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, is there a political reason why we do it? I don't know.
Hire the expertise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would, just to kind of have more of a conversation than a formal going around, I would say that one of the things that I heard at the public forums was, you say that building has this much capacity, but doesn't really. When I walk in that building, it's all being used. And, I think we need an expert look at, really what's there, really what's needed, and really what could one school absorb from another, or what could, what could one school absorb, period, or what can all of our schools absorb, period. And I think that we don't really have the right people available to do that in a way that's sort of thoughtful and looking at a bigger picture.
I would say the principals are the experts of their own schools, and, right, shouldn't they be the ones to be able to say whether or not there's capacity within their school?
Yeah. I think the nice thing about expertise and an architect is that there's a little more vision involved. Instead of saying, we can accommodate 5 more students in this classroom and 3 more in this classroom and whatever, but more somebody who could say, we also need to know the conditions of our buildings in better detail, to know, this school, may be a total loss of school may be far better than we thought it was. I mean, we've done the initial studies of those, but I think that a little more meat on that bone would probably be helpful. Yeah.
And else, these are, this is a very personal conversation for everyone involved. It's a very emotional conversation, and there's a lot of perspective that comes to these debates and considerations. To ask folks like principals or to put all of that review and analysis on those shoulders, I think that's hard.
Yeah.
That's really hard to ask somebody to do that. And I think one of the things that these other types of folks can bring to this conversation for us is also data around benchmarks. Like, how are other communities around the country with similar type of demographics and characteristics? What are some of the norms there that you want to think about? You can disregard or accept, but at least you have some benchmark data that says you are close to a norm or you are way far away from a norm on this. Let's just talk about that. And I think that type of data analysis that an expert can bring to it is also helpful. And then at the end of the day, it is us who are making those hard decisions. Like, we're the ones who are going to have to raise the vote.
Yeah.
It's not the experts. They're just giving us some
That's what we
data.
said all
but
along. I mean, it's not like we're shirking it.
But at least we're coming to it with, I think, and we heard it throughout the community engagements that we had, people, they're looking for us to demonstrate that this has been a thoughtful and a considered process. And I think bringing folks in who have an expertise in this is helpful to do that.
I think the experts also bring us a piece of objectivity to it, so that it eliminates the emotions, because they're just coming in and they're looking at the buildings as a whole and envisioning, you've got this many square feet, you could have this many kindergarten rooms, you could have this many first graders or whatever. And so we're in a different lens than what we would or a principal would walking through a building.
All right, Jory.
I'm thinking equal parts around the driving force of all these conversations, which is our students' experience in our district. And I'm also at the same time thinking about the reality of the state of our buildings. And I think it is probably time to have a really serious look at what the need is in terms of their physical facilities. And I think in order to get the best value out of an architectural analysis, we just have to be really selective about what we're asking them to look at, and not that we're asking them to start from scratch, but giving them the context of where we're coming from and what we're looking for in order to bring in their expertise where it's needed. And that's in regards to the facilities themselves and how they're being used.
Great. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I share some of Chip's concerns, but I do think probably it's good to have an objective person come in and give us some data, but I also agree with everybody who says we do need to make sure we frame it so we have the information that we really need to make the informed decisions.
Thanks. Davina?
I feel like having an expert come and look at moving forward with an analysis would be a thoughtful way to do it, and I do agree with what everybody else has said in terms of just making sure we're considering what the students that are going to be in those schools, what they're going to need, and making sure we give the who's going to come in and do our analysis for us some clear objectives and goals.
Jen?
Thank you for this super helpful tool. Coming in here tonight, I'm like, so how is this gonna go? How are we gonna frame this? And I feel like just having that basic question of do we want to do something more or not is a great way to start it. So thanks. It feels like we can actually accomplish something tonight and put our thoughts together. So I think through the past year, we had data. It was kind of maybe fuzzy data and, are we sure we can rely on this data or not, that we felt and that we heard from the community. And so I think a lot of us felt uncomfortable of like, okay, so are we going to be writing these recommendations of, X, Y, and Z specifically in a specific time frame? And so framing it in this way where we have more time to get more concrete data and to really be able to thoughtfully map out a plan feels more comfortable in this structure. With the number one hire an architect, I guess I agree that, maybe open that up a little bit more just to further analysis in general. And I would just ask us to remember the transportation issue that came up a lot. And so in addition to an architect looking at the buildings, if there are certain, and it might be sequential, right? So there might be certain buildings might be like, oh, these would be ideal for your situation. We then have to make sure that that works as far as getting students there in a timely and safe fashion. And I would also recommend, as far as the equity issue, I feel like there are probably experts out there, and I would suggest that our own administration, who are our resident experts, at least start that process and then perhaps reach out to other districts just to, for the comp analysis like you're mentioning. Because I do feel like we know what we are lacking and we know where the inequities are, and so there probably can be help out there, but I think we have a lot of that ourselves, and so that further analysis might just be in-house. So all that said, I agree that yes, we should continue to trudge forward. Seems like it's at a glacial pace, but we are making progress, even though it might not feel like we are some days, and just keep doing this deliberately and thoughtfully.
It would be nice, as I understand it, we have a 3-year contract with our transportation folks, is that correct?
It was 5 years.
5
We
years,
just completed
okay.
year 1.
It strikes me that that's an ongoing issue regardless of what we do, whether schools are closed or schools are not closed. I think this is a logical way to go. At the end of the day, a board is going to have to make a decision, and somehow to get as many answers as we can would be good. One of the things which is frequently mentioned, I don't know enough about it is school choice. I don't know if there are people who are able to evaluate whether we could do some kind of a survey or have someone do a survey so it gets it out of our laps, because I think there is a tendency to say that the board has made decisions. The board has not made decisions. I mean, listen to us flopping around, trying to make decisions. It's hard. But school choice is one of the things that's mentioned. Transportation, I think, looms very large. And this is a very reasonable, thank you, Mary, way to try and push us along.
I'd just like to say, Peg, August 12th, school choice is our agenda item. Yeah. Amy?
So, yeah, again, thank you, Mary, this is really helpful, because when you look at the no, and you know that we've already, at least are moving in the direction of the 6th grade, it wouldn't be responsible not to know what the impact of that's going to be. So, clearly, we need to, that compels us to move into a yes area. Obviously, this is really vague. There are a lot of areas that have already been mentioned that are not specified in here. I'm wondering a couple things. I'm wondering, what are we doing in the meantime? There's lots of other data points, lots of other questions, opportunities for discussion. I'm also wondering if we could think of it more iteratively, so that we get to a certain, that whoever we hire, and maybe this is part of the criteria for hiring, which is helping us design a process for those data points, because it may be that we want to know things about physical capacity, and then we can ask the questions about the other kinds of equity. Or, I mean, I'm just imagining that every answer is going to lead to some of the, it's going to help us organize the questions that we have. So even though I'm appreciating, for example, that we're going to talk about school choice next time, but we may not know where that fits until we have more information. So it's almost like I'm imagining it's, I know we keep saying it's not an architect, but it's, it's a facilitator. It's not a, it's a
expert.
It's it's a consultant.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, and ideally they would be able to pivot with our, with where we are, but and driving us forward, like making sure that we, that we stick to a timeline that we have. So.
Great, thank you, Amy.
I don't think I can add anything that's already been said, so.
That's certainly fine.
I just feel like one of the things we do have to, when we go through these questions and we get to, yeah, that looks good, now how does that impact this over here, so that it's going to take us time to really, weave through and figure out how does that analysis affect our kids and us, and the final decision and the cost, et cetera. So I'm for going on with the analysis and getting the best expertise we can to help us guide through this.
Chip. I'm sorry.
I'd just like to add one thing to it. The only thing I hope that as an organization, and I mean that broadly as a community, that we think through is that we don't get caught up in analysis paralysis, right?
Right.
Because
That's what I didn't
happens-
use that word. That's exactly what I
Yeah,
think.
and I there's a thin line there, but, and it doesn't mean that you don't do analysis because you're scared of that, you just have to be thoughtful about that, because the consequence of analysis paralysis for us as a community will be that decisions are made for us. Because they will be made by situations that arise, or timings that happen, or bills that come to get paid, and funding that's not there. So decisions will then be made for us if we're not proactive in our thinking and take this on as a community. And so that's the only thing that I want to make sure that we keep in the backs of our minds, that we have to be doing this with the intent to move forward.
And let me clarify a point in terms of my imagining it iteratively, which is we have talked out loud in brainstorming, in side conversations, in the community forums, about all kinds of possible scenarios for if we were gonna go to 3, what would that look like? And what could we imagine a new building having, or, so things like that. So I'm just imagining those decision points that it's not such a linear process, that we limit, that we forget about those ideas that we said, let's make sure we talk about that. Does that help? Does that make sense? And so I'm not imagining analysis paralysis either. I'm just imagining us being more intentional as the data comes, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think to Victoria's point, like, I never worry about the answers. I always figure you're gonna find smart people and they're gonna be able to figure it out. I always worry about the questions. Like, because if you don't ask the right questions, then you're not gonna get the information that you need. And so, as a board, I think putting a lot of time and thought into that proposal, or whatever the word is that we will use, just needs to be super thoughtful.
Yep, agreed.
Peter?
Yes, Jim.
Just
Sorry.
following on the analysis paralysis issue, one of the things that is out there, obviously, is school funding, and we don't have unlimited time before we're going to creep up and cross, potentially, that magic number that we don't want to cross, because our numbers are still going down over time. So I'm not saying I'm rushing it, but on the other side, this is predicated from a lot of different directions, okay? And one of them is, this equation is just getting worse every year. And this coming year, it's going to be a lot worse than it was last year, because we have fewer children, or will. So I think we don't want to be paralyzed by trying to collect the data, so at some point we'll have to make some decisions which lead to how do we control costs. And I don't mean that I'm naive enough to think you are going to make it all happen by just doing this, no. But it's certainly part of the original reason for Act 46, I think, from the state's point of view.
Well, I think that goes to what Mary said, that if we're not out there being proactive, that those decisions we made for us just being forced for financial reasons.
Ironically, for some people, being pushed to acknowledge is the only way that any decision we make will be satisfactory. And I think we have to just accept that from the beginning. That if a decision is made and we're not down to 5 kids in a school, for some people that no decision is going to be acceptable. And that's just a piece of the responsibility as a board that's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just to kind of sum up what I've heard, probably first and foremost is that we need to be, and probably we can spend some more time on this later in August, maybe part of the retreat, but really being clear about what we're expecting from analysis and what is it we want to learn from that. I think that it's always a good idea to remind us about transportation, how that follows into it. And we also, I think what I heard is that, and maybe this would be something that the administration could start talking about among themselves, but what is it that, what is it that they think our schools should have? What would be a model school, and can that be part of what this analysis is about? It's one thing to just sort of say, well, let's just do this to save money. I'd really like to see it more as an opportunity to, let's make decisions that are going to make things perhaps better, not just about saving money, but to really be able to take a look and say, this is really what for us would be a school that has the things that we want in it.
I like that. You're saying it's about a model school.
Yeah.
Right. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't talking.
Oh, I know, yeah.
But the reality is, there are many of the public out there who've come to none of these meetings, okay, to voice their opinions, that feel like we have to do something now that we're consolidated, okay? And I think I hear it from people on that, why haven't you done this? What's going on? They're not pounding on my door, but it is an issue, okay? And I think we have to respect that as part of this whole community of schools now. I mean, it's reality.
So what I'm not hearing anybody advocating for, or at least advocating for strongly, is as we go down our paths, going down the no path. That'd be a fair assessment of our group here. Then we will continue down this path of creating our facilities master plan and work up some language and some content that reflects the will of the board on that. And then again, as I keep saying, ultimately we'll have a plan that's put in front of us that we will formally adopt.
Peter, just one other question. Let me get this straight. On the capacity issue, are we agreeing that one will look for this expert?
Yes.
Okay, we're not, I mean, it's not like we're going to decide that later after we discuss it now.
No, actually, I think that it'd be a good directive to the administration to start putting some feelers out there and present what does an expert mean.
And then next question is, per the questions, as you say, who, I don't think those questions are necessarily easily, formulated by all of us. Obviously, someone has to be responsible for it.
And I would just say that having met a couple of these guys, they can help us focus our questions. We met with a kind of a pseudo engineer and an architect, just sort of talking about what a facilities master plan meant. But they clearly had the expertise of having been through this a number of times, not just in Vermont, but other places, to help people like us kind of focus ourselves. Yeah. Yeah, Mary.
When we talk about these experts, do they have some educational theory background too? Because we don't want just, we're moving kids to this place and that place and bodies. I want to know that we're getting educational expertise on what's the best for kids.
Yeah, I guess, I think we'll find out more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, it's not just an architect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can just speak for personal, from a business perspective. We've worked, in my career, we've worked with architects who, when they specialize in if they say they specialize in school construction, they only win bids when they're able to demonstrate that they also have working for them educational experts.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because to your point, nobody wants to just talk about moving chairs around.
Right.
Yeah.
Great discussion. I really appreciate everybody kind of chiming in and speaking up. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is any other business to come before the board. And if not, then at 7:30, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn, although I would give the superintendent an opportunity if he had anything he wanted to mention.
Because we don't want to go through an entire meeting.
I did send an email about our authorization for the diploma program, so that's now fully official, which is super exciting. And the whole team is just really overjoyed and excited to get started. And I think I shared that our cohort's fairly large. I think we're around 40 kids from the junior class that are starting it, which is really great. I'm working on a job posting for our principal for next year. This is going to be Bill's last year. And so I'm thinking ahead and want to get this out internationally, just thinking about folks that maybe are leading overseas and are coming back to the States. So I'm going to work through some IB networks to get that information out too. So that's going to start rolling, and that's going to be a big change. Bill's been there for quite some time, and so we'll be putting together a committee and kind of getting started on the earlier end than we normally would, which is usually around December that we start putting that together. We'll be working a little bit earlier on that. And yeah, summer's good. We're doing a ton of planning. We've got our admin retreat coming up on the 5th and 6th of August. And we've got new leaders coming in who we're really excited about. We are going to be redoing our supervision evaluation model, which is big news. We've been talking about it for 5 or 6 years, and we're now finally doing it, which is exciting. And that was last updated in 2002. It's been a couple of years. Yeah. And so I mean, I'm really excited about what's coming next year and the pieces that are in place. We're also, this coming year, will be Mid-year, the MYP program will be authorized, and then by the end of this coming year, we'll have PYP authorized, so we'll be completely, closing the circle on that. And so, yeah.
On schedule.
I think things are going really well.
Just refresh our memories,
Yeah.
because I'm sure you told us at one point as to the number of IB, either high schools or districts in the country.
So there,
In the United
yeah,
States.
there are a fair number of diploma programs. That's the 11th and 12th grade. That's the initial program for IB, which began in 1968.
Fair meaning what? I don't know what that means.
Well, regionally, not many in New England, but nationally, hundreds.
Okay.
PYP and MYP less so, but those are increasing in numbers, so the IB numbers are increasing. Caitlin, do you have any of those stats?
I was just gonna
Okay.
Google it. This
Okay.
must be someplace.
But in terms of,
I just wanted, now that we're there, I just wanted to
Yeah.
refresh our perspective.
But the
on
number of
where we
districts,
are.
yeah, the number
K-12
of
districts.
IB world districts is very small. The last official number I got was 8. So when we get there, I believe there are 1 or 2 other districts that were in process, so I think we'll be
Wow.
like 10 in the country, which is really exciting.
I got the basic numbers.
Okay.
So in the United States, I don't have the numbers about districts. I think that they're so uncommon that that's not something that they're publishing widely. So in the US, there are 580 approved PYP, primary years programs. There are 660 active middle years programs, 946 active diploma programs, and 108 active career-related programs. That's their newest, but it's growing rapidly.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't show who has the whole continuum, which is exciting and
Just
special.
that it's good to have perspective
Yeah,
of where we
yeah.
are. I know in New England it's rare because no one in Vermont.
There's one PYP school in Dover, and then the Long Trail School has
They have
a
the diploma program.
diploma program, which is quite small.
Private school.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I guess either of you two, do you know where things stand on the CP at the Career Center?
They are doing information gathering to fill out their application, their initial application. And we have discovered that the mission statement for the Career Center doesn't have all of the language or some of the language that CP requires. So we're going through the process of updating that so that they can then submit that also.
You know, has staff over there had the opportunity to visit any career programs?
I know that Dana went to a conference
Yeah.
in San Francisco.
With Jake and a couple,
And then
and Kelly
Jake's
maybe.
been a couple of places, but not the entire staff.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I keep pushing is that, you know, we have to have the whole staff on board, not just 1 or 2 teachers.
Yeah.
But the connection this past year between the Career Center and ACSD was definitely unparalleled in terms of what we've previously experienced, and I think will only continue to grow as really, we're now kind of programmatically really lynching together, so.
Seems to be.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah.
That's very exciting. Yeah. Yes.
Just going back to the master planning, how are you envisioning identifying the consultant that we hire? Like, now, and do you want board help with that, I guess, is the question.
What I was going to do was just kind of look around Vermont and a little bit broader too, probably, just to see what the options are, and then probably come back with some recommendations and some ideas. You know, we won't commit to anything.
Right.
Because I think it's important for the board to get, you know, in talking about expert and what is it and what does it include, that we're clear. And frankly, I think also it's important for the board to talk about those questions and the outcomes that the board wants to see, so that we can pick the right person. Because different firms will have different strengths, and I think it's important to be clear about what we're looking for.
Yep. That's exactly why I asked. And I'm also wondering, because sometimes it's also really educational for whoever's participating in the process of better understanding the industry, who's out there and what they can offer and this and that, I'm just wondering and offering myself anyway, at least as one interested person, in being involved in that process, if it's helpful.
Yeah.
If it doesn't bog it down, but if it helps to inform all of us, and we can ask questions that, that we have, but also they can tell us things that we may not really understand about the process until we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, having lived and worked in other states, there's a benefit to getting someone from outside. There's also a benefit from having someone who understands the Vermont context too. So that's something to, I think, look at as well. I mean, I'd be concerned with some people coming from outside of Vermont and coming and not really understanding our culture, our values, et cetera. I've experienced that just as a superintendent in visiting with other superintendents from other states. They tend to live a different reality.
Would you care to elaborate?
It's getting interesting, isn't it?
They don't understand, they don't have the, I mean, I think this happens sometimes when people move to Vermont and expect it to be one way, and it's not the way that they thought it was, because they're bringing some other paradigm to the state. So I just think it's something to be thoughtful about in selecting someone. Yeah.
We don't want to be closed to other ideas either.
No. I'm saying there's a balance between the two.
So I just following up on what Amy said, if anybody else is sort of interested in being kind of in the conversation about this, let me know. And maybe I'll task Peter with putting together a very small little ad hoc group to bounce these ideas off of.
Yes, not to committee it to death, but...
Not just very, very small ad hoc.
Yes.
You may be the only one who get recognized.
And that's fine. That's fine. I just have been through processes like these enough to know how useful it would be.
Yeah, that's good.
Just straight analysis, no paralysis, stand you down.
Exactly. Information.
All right, well, before it gets too hot in here. Or is that a motion to adjourn, I hear, Victoria?
Yes.
All right. All those in favor of adjourning?
There's a groan to it.
Thank you all very much. There's some treats up there on the table. Please help yourself.